What's the time you felt something was off and were right about it? I was at the gas station with my sister and she was about to get out of the car to pump gas. We were pretty low, but I had a horrid feeling about the place and my spine felt cold. I grabbed her wrist and said to go to the gas station down the road instead. She noticed my expression, promptly started the car, and we went to the gas station about 3 minutes down the road. In that 3 minutes a shootout happened at the gas station we had just left. When I was around 10 or so, I had some friends over. When the time came to take them home, I had a really bad feeling. Something internally was screaming at me, don't go with them, it's a very bad day to go out. I went anyway and we ended up getting in a car accident. I was the only one in the car who got hurt. I work at a jail. Once had a feeling that a particular detainee was behaving unusually. I tried to talk to my co-workers about it, but they told me I was imagining things. By the end of the night, we were donning riot gear and wrestling him. My gut was right, and now I always trust myself even when others don't. I was volunteering at an animal rescue, and one evening I was cleaning up after everybody else had left, and a woman walked in, wanting to look at our puppies. I was relatively new, so I didn't think anything about it, but the dog I would end up adopting did not like this woman. Every time she picked up a puppy my dog would just stare at her and low growl. The next time I was in volunteering I told the director about it, and she asked me to describe the woman. Turns out this woman had been banned for life from adopting dogs from the organization due to animal abuse. I trusted that dog's judgment for the rest of her life. Once, when I was about 18, I was drinking with my older friends, 24 to 27-year-old. We were hanging out at one of their friends' place, and these dudes were kinda seedy. Like lots of underage kids, and whole lot of weed on the table. I think there was meth also. I got this dirty feeling, and I bailed there with some lame excuse. Bam. An hour later there was a hostage type of dealio. The dude who owned the house had flipped on something trivial, and pulled out his shotgun. I had this odd feeling when pulling up to a red light. I felt like I shouldn't pull all the way up to the line. So I didn't. Sure enough, a car flew through the red light and got hit. They ended up about 6 inches from my front bumper. Had I pulled up to the line, and with the dump truck behind me was as close as he was, those cars would have absolutely crushed mine given the speeds they both were going. I had twin newborns in the car with me. A neighbor tried inviting me and a couple neighborhood kids in his house during mid-2012, and I said no to the video games and candy. But my friends didn't, and I knew something was up, but my dad said I can't possibly ruin some middle-aged man's life without proof, and last year he was caught by police after Google started an investigation. He was caught and imprisoned for child pornography and touching the neighborhood kids. Girlfriend was struggling in college and had to get a tutor. I got a bad feeling in my gut once she started hanging out with him a lot, and we were friends on Facebook. About a week later he removed me off Facebook, and she was super sketchy. We got in a fight and she talked me into going on a break, and that was my next bad feeling. It was my first relationship. She went out and fucked her tutor literally the night we had our fight, and the next morning there's pics of her on a bus with him head on his shoulder and his arm around her. I dumped her ass instantly and now she's married to him. My house was robbed. I had gotten off work pretty late as usual and was driving home. Just as I turned the corner I got the biggest sinking sensation in my stomach, and all I could think was the house was robbed. And this is the first time this type of feeling was so specific and ominous. I'm putting the keys in the door feeling full dread, and opening the door everything is everywhere, broken, turned over, missing. And I just stood in the doorway looking around at how surreal that feeling was. That night I couldn't figure out why I felt that as I was pulling up to my house. Maybe I had left a light on and my brain subconsciously recognized that the light wasn't on anymore. Or maybe I had overheard / saw something in the neighborhood when I was sleeping the night before / taking a walk / leaving for work. It just really freaked me out, having that all come true, with such an intense feeling of inexplicable dread leading up to it. I woke up really anxious one day, like I knew something bad was going to happen. Just in a lot of distress to the point that I was considering calling out of work that day. That afternoon my boyfriend got a call that his father had shot himself and was in the hospital. He is okay now, but it was really strange. I used to manage a coffee shop, and I was closing one night with a girl on my staff. We were never busy at night as we were on the outskirts of town. A guy was standing outside eating a chicken sandwich from McDonald's, but he kept peering in the windows, like, with his hands cupped around his eyes, as if it were dark, and we might be closed. He paced around out there for a while. I noticed he was wearing a shirt from a local high school, but the car he drove up in was from a different county. I suspected he had stolen the car, but I didn't call the cops because I had no proof. I told the girl to go in the back and I would help him if he came in. He did come in. He asked me why everything was so expensive. I could tell he was aggravated. I was pleasant and even gave him a sample of our product. It was a tiny chunk of food, but he asked for a fork and sat at a table to eat it. He then said, "I'll be right back," and walked out to his car. He did not come back luckily. Instead he drove down about a mile away where he murdered someone to steal their car and continue his killing spree. Next day the girl I was working with that night called me and told me I needed to get a paper right now. Front page was my freaky customer's mugshot. 3 years ago this August, I began noticing my grandpa napping for longer than usual, massaging his neck, and not wanting to go on his bike rides. And the bike ride was a daily ritual for over 30 years. I asked him how he was feeling and everything could have been chalked up to getting older, but I insisted that he get to the doctor. He was diagnosed with leukemia and died within 3 days. I'll always miss him, but I know that without his diagnosis, a lot of our extended family wouldn't have traveled to visit him before he died. I just wish I felt the need to ask about his health sooner. I went to middle school with a dude who always gave me the creeps. I was told, both by other students and by adults, that I was being mean and I should be friends with him, even though he made me uncomfortable. It was a small private school and there was big push for everybody to play happy family regardless of circumstances. He had this fake smile / grimace he'd do that just made my skin crawl, and I couldn't stand even trying to make eye contact with him. Well, most of decade later it comes out that he's a repeat offending rapist, including raping and beating his girlfriend and posting photos of it when she tried to break up with him. When the news broke I emailed a bunch of the people we used to go to school with about it, and their response was pretty much uniformly, "She's clearly lying to try to ruin his life. He'd never do something like that." Seriously? You can't fathom that the dude who was already making inappropriate sexual comments to female classmates at age 12, which the teachers never shut down and just considered funny / quirky, by the way, and would joke about harming animals, could possibly be a sexual predator? A guy came over to a friend's house one night and there was just something skeevy about him. I ditched the party and forgot about him. A few years later we heard he had molested his cousin's kid, but nobody could prove it, so he never went to jail over it. Best part of the story is a few years ago, he lost both arms in a farming accident. Karma is a bitch. 3 years ago this August, I began noticing my grandpa napping for longer than usual, massaging his neck, and not wanting to go on his bike rides. And the bike ride was a daily ritual for over 30 years. I asked him how he was feeling and everything could have been chalked up to getting older, but I insisted that he get to the doctor. He was diagnosed with leukemia and died within 3 days. I'll always miss him, but I know that without his diagnosis, a lot of our extended family wouldn't have traveled to visit him before he died. I just wish I felt the need to ask about his health sooner. A friend of mine had this sugar daddy boyfriend who sent out a group message through her account on Facebook one day saying that she had stolen his car and was wondering if anyone knew how to find her. He was weirdly calm and nice about it, like, "I don't want her to get in trouble. I just want her to come back home safely. I bailed her out of jail before and took care of her because I care about her." The other people in the chat were very sympathetic with him, saying he was obviously a nice guy and that my friend didn't know what was good for her. but something didn't feel right to me. It felt like he was acting. Sure enough, about a year later I find the guy's full name and Google it. He had been found guilty of murdering an ex-girlfriend's mother in order to steal that girlfriend's inheritance. The girlfriend ending up killing herself in jail, and he got out by paying $1 million bail. Ooh, I have a good one. I was hanging out with my boyfriend, and we had decided to order a pizza. We had been waiting a pretty long time, well over a half hour, and the pizza still wasn't there. We were getting ready to call them to see what was up, and I nervously brought up the possibility that they had been in an accident. I'd had the feeling that had happened in the last 10 minutes. I have anxiety and my mind constantly jumps to the worst case scenario, so I'd been trying to ignore it. My BF assured me that everything was fine and went to call the pizza place. My BF comes back into the room a little while later, shocked. He told me that the driver had been in an accident, but he was fine, thank goodness. Thanks for watching the video. For more content like this, please subscribe, like, and share the video and push the notification button.